At the beginning of the war, the Russian army had the task of reaching Nikolaev and Odessa via Kherson. Odessa is a highly developed industrial region of the state, whose industry plays a significant role in Ukraine. On its territory, there are enterprises of mechanical engineering, metalworking, chemical, petrochemical, food, light industry, and other industries. And of course, it is a major commercial port of international importance, located on the northwest shore of the Black Sea, in the southwestern part of the Gulf of Odessa. It's the biggest port in Ukraine in terms of cargo turnover. In terms of equipment, it is even better than the Crimea and Novorossiysk. It is also a land link with Transnistria. Putin wanted it all, but over time, the offensive began to slow down, and eventually the Russian military stopped at Kherson and went on the defensive because there were not enough troops to achieve such a goal, and those that were sent to other parts of the battle. Now we will look at why the Russian army offensive stopped in Kherson. If you look at the map, you could see that Kherson is divided into two banks, right and left. Active combat operations take place on the right bank. The bank is determined by the direction of the river flow. A large number of Russian military personnel are concentrated there. In order to conduct combat operations, ammunition, fuel, food, etc. have to be constantly replenished. All this has to be transported from the left bank to the right. Here, we come to the main reason for Putin's defeat in Kherson. This is logistics. It used to work without any problems. The Russian military created many depots in Kherson with weapons, fuel, etc. But the situation was completely changed by the American HIMARS artillery rocket system. Ukraine now has more than 20 of these systems in service and has promised to supply 18 more. As it turned out, during the battle, Russia is not able to cope with high-precision, modern missiles. The air defense system simply does not have time to shoot down these missiles. Speaking of missiles, together with the missile systems, Ukraine received the GMRLS, Guided Multiple Rocket Launch System, with a caliber of 227 millimeters and costing more than $150,000 apiece. After Ukraine's Western partners began supplying these weapons, Russia began to have logistical problems. The Ukrainian army used the HIMARS intelligently on the battlefield. They began systematically destroying all Russian ammunition depots, command posts, and most importantly, began shelling Antonov Bridge. This is the most important bridge in Kherson, which connects the left and the right banks. It was used by Russia to transport most of its equipment. After several dozen strikes on the bridge, its operation became impossible. The Russian military began pontoon bridges, but they are ineffective and are under fire from the Ukrainian army. Ukraine also shelled the bridge at Novaya Kakhovka. This is the second bridge that Russia has used to move its troops. All in all, they have started to have obvious problems. In addition, the recent bombing on October 8th of the Crimean Bridge greatly affected Russia's logistics because it was the bridge used to move all military equipment to Kherson. Now, they are forced to move the equipment through Mariupol and Melitopol, which are also under fire control of the Ukrainian military. This is another reason why Kherson is needed. After all, the road from Moscow to Crimea goes through it, but not through the Crimean Bridge as before, but directly through Mariupol and Melitopol. Putin is trying with all his might to keep Kherson, because if the Ukrainian army takes Kherson back, it will get closer to Crimea, which is what Putin fears the most. Besides, the Kherson region has access to the Dnieper, and the North Crimean Canal itself begins on its territory. Therefore, it was strategically important to occupy the entire region. This ensures complete security of the Crimea in terms of water supply for many years, during which time it will be possible to find an alternative source of water. That's why Putin made a nationwide mobilization in September. 300,000 people are drafted for service and then sent to the war in Ukraine, with practically no training whatsoever. Most of these people have never served and have never held a machine gun in their hands, and they are sent straight into combat. In addition, these 300,000 people need to be armed to give them everything they need: automatic rifles, shoes, clothing, etc. Russia is not able to do this, so many people who come to the service buy everything with their own money. In addition, winter is coming soon, and warm clothing will be needed as well. In general, many military experts say that Ukraine has every chance of liberating Kherson in the next few weeks. Now, both sides are accumulating reserves. Lieutenant General Igor Romanenko, former deputy chief of the Ukrainian General Staff, said. In addition, winter is coming soon, and warm clothing will be needed as well. In general, many military experts say that Ukraine has every chance of liberating Kherson in the next few weeks. Now, both sides are accumulating reserves. Lieutenant General Igor Romanenko, former deputy chief of the Ukrainian General Staff, said, "The forecast is optimistic. Of course, we would like to liberate Kherson as quickly as possible. The Russian military is already preparing to flee. However, we will not force Kherson just because we really want to. We value our soldiers very much." According to him, Ukrainian intelligence is working to identify weaknesses in the defense, while the Ukrainian military is systematically destroying the control system of the Russian armed forces, hitting command posts and destroying logistical support. So, it is likely by the end of this year, we will see the final battle for Kherson. In the meantime, Putin is trying to distract Ukraine with his attacks on the country's important infrastructure and beyond. The attacks are carried out with Russian Shahed missiles and kamikaze drones that Russia received from Iran. Drone modifications such as the Quds Mohair 6, Shahed 129, Shahed 136. These drones are launched from containers that can easily be put not only on trucks, but also railroad train cars, various ships, and other mobile vehicles. Iran does not officially confirm the delivery of these drones, but there are already many videos on the internet with evidence that these are their drones, and they are in Ukraine. Only Russia renames them Germanium-2. The Shahed 136 is a drone first introduced in the year 2020, with a claimed maximum flight range of up to 2,000 kilometers and the ability to deliver a warhead weighing up to 50 kilograms. But according to American experts, its actual range is several hundred kilometers. Nevertheless, they are causing a lot of problems for Ukraine, as Russia has a decent amount of them now, and they launch them plus or minus 100 per day. A serious problem is that these drones knock out air defense missiles, which are already scarce, and each such missile costs a lot of money. So Ukraine needs anti-aircraft systems that will handle the drones. Ukraine has its own Zu-23 anti-aircraft guns in service, but there are only a few hundred of them, and they are from the Soviet Union era. That is why talks are underway on the supply of modern anti-aircraft systems from Western partners to protect the sky from drones. Also, according to the latest information, residents of the Kherson region began arriving in Russia after local authorities in Kherson called for their evacuation. Moscow-appointed officials are avoiding the very word evacuation. They talk about the possibility of a humanitarian trip to rest and recuperation in the Russian Federation, although they mention that the departure of residents is organized to avoid civilian casualties due to shelling. For its part, Ukraine has urged residents of the region to leave for Ukraine-controlled territory. The British Financial Times believes that the calls for evacuation may be linked to the success of the AFU counteroffensive in the Kherson region. According to the Ukrainian authorities, 75 settlements have been recently liberated there. In general, the pace of Ukrainian advance depends on the availability of their own forces and means to accomplish the task, and on the enemy's forces and means to counteract. The Russians have a very powerful grouping on the right bank. It consists mainly of airborne troops of line units of the Russian Federation. The only problem they have is that they have been on the right bank for a very long time and do not fulfill practically any tasks except defensive ones. The supply of shells, ammunition, and equipment due to the fact that Ukraine is destroying their crossings over the Dnieper is decreasing, and after the action of Ukrainian troops on the Crimean Bridge, it has decreased even more. But nevertheless, there is a fairly powerful grouping of Russian troops on the right bank. It amounts to about 20 battalion tactical groups, which have now performed a withdrawal maneuver. They have reduced the defended area and increased the density of troops, and so they have restored their combat readiness in terms of numbers per square kilometer of defended territory. But the supply of ammunition to the right bank is getting worse and worse because of the undermining of the Crimean Bridge. Although Russia has repeatedly stated that it protects this bridge from all directions, on land, on water, underwater, in the air, and in space.